A bouquet of evil. That's what we got here. This is where Adam and Eve's sin begins to blossom and multiply. Blossom and multiply. From the boy they thought was the Savior, the Lord of heaven. Wayelid. Laka Noka. Et. Irad. We Irad. Yalad. Et. Mechu Yael. You may. Che Yel. Yalet. Et. Metushalel. You Metushael. Yaled et Lamech. Now, I want you to understand that these names that Cain, this is Cain's family. Cain. His family. What's Cain mean?
I'm sorry?
Cain mean? Cain?
Oh.
Cain? Gotten or acquired. I have gotten a man, even the Lord. They thought he was Jehovah. Okay? Now let's look at this, and the names that are here are similar to the names of the line of faith. I want you to understand, very similar. But these people, this is a mockery of the names of the line of faith. This is a mockery of the names of the line of faith. 4:18 now. Wayeled, and he was born, third person masculine singular, Niphael, wow, consecutive, imperfect, to Enoch. All right? Enoch. All right, what's Enoch mean? Huh?
Teacher.
Teacher. All right. Go back in here. Genesis, the 4th chapter. Now, these, in verse number 16 is where it starts. Then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord, and he settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Now, what does the land of Nod mean? Brother Abe, you remember what Nod means? Nod. Nod. What does Nod mean?
Flower?
What?
Flower?
Oh, no. Nod. Remember what that was? Wandering. The land of wandering. In other words, he could not make the land produce himself anymore, because now the land was double cursed. Whatever they ever try to plant from now on is going to be doubly cursed. He's not going to be able to grow anything out of it. So what he does, goes over there, is what, Brother Roger?
Starts slavery.
He goes over there and initiates the act and the practice of slavery, which is contrary to, really, the will of God. East of Eden. Okay, this is east of the Garden of Eden, okay? And Cain had relationships with his wife, and she conceived and gave birth to Enoch. Okay, that's number 17. And he built a city and called the name of the city Enoch. Now remember what that means, Sharon? Teacher. What do you think they were teaching in this city? His land had become a bouquet of thorns. This man is living in rebellion against God. And of course, Adam is having other children, isn't he? And he's having children, and of course, those children are probably a little bit ahead of these. So Enoch, not Enoch, but Cain, he is blaspheming God, naming his children after his father's children. In other words, his brothers and sisters. And he named the name of the city Teacher. This is like Babylon. This is a pre-Babylon place. After the name of his son. Now here's where we are in 18 now. That just gets us caught up with it. He begins naming the lineage of Enoch, or of Cain. Okay? These people, I want you to understand, do not live past the flood. These are all dead. The curse of Cain, we talked about the curse of Cain. It was called what? What was the curse that thing, what was that Hebrew word that God placed upon Cain? We almost have an English word like it. Oath. Remember oath? Oath. That's a sign of protection. God actually protected Cain from being killed for the murder of his brother. He actually he put protection on him. Whatever it was, remember we talked about that a little bit last week. One, I think it was John Wesley. He said that he, now of course, what John Wesley said, he was a very poor theologian, period. But what he said doesn't really matter much, but I just quoting this. John Wesley, the pure Arminian heresy, said that he believed that God made Cain so ugly that when people saw him, they'd run. That he was grotesque and ugly. That was a sign. And of course, most of the people in the South say the sign of Cain was what? That he turned his skin black. That doesn't have anything to do with this at all. Okay? It has nothing to do with this. That is a total different period of time. There's when you need to study hermeneutics. That's why this chart is up on the wall all the time, is so you can understand what happened. We're living over here now at this period of time before the flood. At the flood, all of these people were killed except for how many? 8 altogether if you take off Enoch, because Enoch didn't die. And Methuselah. All right, now we're even going to see a guy by the name of Methuselah in here. And to Enoch was born at Jared, which means to descend, descending like Jared, one of the sons of Adam. And Jared, he begat Yelad et Mehujael. Mehujael means that God is wrestling, or struck by God, or whatever you someone that is wrestling with God. Isn't this now? Just think about this. One that's wrestling is struck by God, and Mehujael, God is fighting. He begat Wayeled et Methusael. In other words, this is Methuselah, man of the dark, or when he's dead it shall come to pass, or born to die. Struck by God. And Methuselah, he begat Lamech. Lamech means a wild man, an overthrower, or a king of kings. Adonai is like this word, all right? A warrior, a prince, Sayer, king. But this is a rebel king. This isn't a king like on the faith line. This is a rebel king. 419. Now we have another problem beginning. Remember, we have a bouquet of evil. A bouquet of evil. Kind of like a double message tonight. War songs, the first war song, and bouquet of evil. This is definitely a bouquet of evil. Wayikach. Li, or lo, that is. Lamech. Shetieh. Nashim. Shem. Ha-Chat. Adah. Wishem. Ha-Shanit. Now that word on the end there, that is not a hard T, but a soft one in it, which is a TH sound. Ha-Shanith. And Tizillah. Now let's go back and look at these words. What happened here? And he took, third person masculine, singular, cal, while, consecutive, and perfect. He took and kept on taking for himself Lamech. What do we have here? Sheti. What does the word Sheti mean? Brother Roger?
It's divided.
It's divided, which is what?
Two.
Corrupt. Change. Corruption. Two. Singular is what?
The high.
Unit. It's singular, it's unit, it's perfection. Okay? Number 2 is division and corruption. So now, looking at that in that way also, and he kept taking for himself, Lamech, 2 nashim. 2 what?
Women.
2 women, 2 wives. Now he's got 2 wives. Where did he learn this from? Where did he get this idea from? Where do you think the origin of this source is? The lust, the evil that his father and grandfather kept instituting one to the other, the evil. All right, now he's got 2 wives. 2 wives. In the New Testament, it said a pastor and a deacon should be a man of 1 wife. What it's actually saying there, 1 at a time, literally. A lot of people today, we got this Catholic idea of no divorce. I mean, divorce should be the last thing that ever happens to a marriage, period. It's not good, okay? It's not good. And it is the last thing that happens to marriage, okay? But it's not good, and it doesn't work out. But it takes 2 people to make a marriage. Sometimes that doesn't work. Paul the Apostle tells in the New Testament, he suggests the reasons for divorce. The reasons for it. Names that. But he said, a pastor and a deacon should be a man of 1 wife. 1 wife at a time. Not only that, but what else were they practicing back at this time? During the New Testament time. They had multiple wives. They believed in polygamy. They did. That happened. That was going on all this time. But he said a pastor should have 1 wife. Not 2, not 3. Church couldn't afford all that. Okay? But here is where this polygamy begins. Right here. We don't have this for a long time in the faith line, do we? What's the first mention of polygamy in the faith line? What is it? Huh? Abraham. What did polygamy cost him? What did he cost his descendants? What has it cost all the world? Problems. Wars. Wars and more wars. Constant wars. He had 2 wives. Name of the one, Ha-Ashat. Name of the one, Ada. Now what does Ada mean? You remember what Ada means now, Brother Abe? Ada. 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 What does Ada mean, Sharon?
Ornament.
Ornament. All right, ornament. She's pretty. The girl's pretty. Ornament. Some women are very beautiful. We look at them and they're nice to look at. They're nice fixtures in the world. This woman was a nice compliment to the home. She was pretty. All right? Pretty. But also remember one thing. Pretty is what? Pretty does. Pretty is as pretty does. A woman can be beautiful, and then the next thing you do, she starts acting, and that's not pretty. Ada. Wisham, and name of the second, Hashanith. Now, this is the second one here. What do you see in this little noun right here, this little adjective? What do you see about this one? Name of the second. What about this one? What do you see in that word? You got a definite article on the front of it, don't you? What's that tau for? This is a numeral, isn't it? What's that tau for? That's feminine gender. All right. The name of the second female. You can put that down there, the second female, if you want to write it down, because this is feminine. Okay? The second female. Her name is Zillah. Zillah. Let's think about this second one now. Let's see what her name means, Zillah. It means death, the shadow of darkness, the shadow of death. The shadow of terror, the shadow of darkness. What creeps out there in the dark? What's creeping in the dark? Around the dark corners. My great-great-grandfather, Sam Paul, said, when it talked about gunfighting, he said that's why God made corners. Shoot around a corner. shoot around the corner. Guard, look around, sneak up on them and shoot them. That's why God made corners. That's why he made trees. Get behind a tree and shoot somebody. It's a lot safer that way. Okay? That's what the idea is. A shadow, someone around the corner, behind the tree, behind the hill, looking to get you. That's what that word Zilla means. Or in verse 20, Wateled, Ada, Et, Yaval, Hu, Haya, Avi, Yoshev, Ohel, Umikneh. And brought forth Ada, Jabal. What's Jabal mean now? Here's another prophetic name. Jabal. It literally means to flow with violence. To move. This is what we call a guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare. You know all about that, Brother Roger? No. Guerrilla warfare. Yeah. One of them got you one time, shot an arrow at you, didn't they? Right up there, he was flying that helicopter, and one of these guerrilla warfare guys shot an arrow at him and almost come through into the cockpit, didn't it?
It did come through the chin bubble.
Yeah, it did come through. That's what you call terrorism, isn't it? This means to hide and fight, to flow with violence, to hijack. To hijack. He became father of sitters. Sitters in tents. He became the father of those that dwell in tents. The nomads. The nomads. Which later on would be like Abraham. Like the Arabs over there today. Arabs, you know, I remember when I was down in Jericho, our doctor that was telling us about, he's a doctor of archaeology and anthropology and all that, and he was talking about the nomads. He was Arabic, and he was talking about the nomads, and I want to emphasize to you this one thing, that all the Arabs are not sons of Ishmael. All the Arabs are not sons of Ishmael. Most of the Arabs are sons of Abraham through Keturah. You go look at those names, okay? And they are through Esau and Ishmael too. But only a small percentage are from Ishmael, okay? The dwellers in tents. This doctor was telling me, this anthropologist and archaeologist, he was telling us, one time this king built a palace right there by Jericho. Jericho, Mike, have you been to Jericho? You've been there, haven't you, Sharon? It's a beautiful place, isn't it? Beautiful, beautiful. It's a paradise. It's an oasis, so to speak. And he built her a beautiful palace there near Jericho. And the girl had been raised in tents. She was a nomad. And every day, when she'd get up in the morning, she would start crying. And at nighttime, when she would go to bed, she would be crying and weeping and mourning. Because she lusted after, she wanted to dwell in tents again. She did not like her beautiful palace with fountains and all this, palm trees and everything. She wanted to live out there in the wild country. Live out in open spaces. She couldn't stand the confinement of it. Well, this is the first of the nomads. And he's going to become a cowboy. All right? In tents and cattle. He's going to be a shepherd. Now, what was Abel? Abel was a shepherd. So now, some of this family have been forced to become shepherds. Shepherds. And here we have what would become later on the nomadic people. These are not related to these. I want you to understand that. These people all died out. Don't get that mixed up. We have a period of time, we have a great judgment coming, which is the flood. 421. Wisham, Akiv, Yovel, Hu, Haya, Avi, Kal, Tephes, Kenor, Wiyugan, Wiyugav, that is. Let's go back and look at this. And name of his brother Jubal. Jubal. Jubal was a nomad, but he played instruments. Now I want you to understand, these people were very musical. This is the man that invented music. And this is not the faith line. These people have invented music now. Music can be used for two things. What? The worship of Satan and the worship of God. But now God's people, and a little history also. Baptists originally would not have instrumental music in their churches at all. Did you know that? Baptists would not have instrumental music in their churches at all. You have to go back in church history and find out why they did not want instrumental music in the churches. The Baptists stood always against the upper crust of religious society. That was the church state, always. Now we have the Pope, we have Catholicism, which is not the truth at all. There is nothing in the Catholicism that is truth. Okay? It's all a perversion of truth. The Catholic Church began in about 325 A.D. when Constantine called it the Church Catholic, the Church Universal, and he began to put down what is right and what is wrong. We have the Council of Nicaea, etc., 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 naming off all these things, and that's when the church went that way. Now the Baptists stood against him, but the Catholic Church killed between 50 and 100 million people. Christians. All Christians they killed. And these 50 to 100 million people were Baptist. Back at that time. They were called everything under the sun, but they were Baptist. Now, they began to persecute Baptists. And when the Catholic Church would do one thing, the Baptists would do the opposite. Now, out from the Catholic Church, now instead of becoming Baptist, when Luther left the Catholic Church, Luther was a Catholic priest, wasn't he? He was a Catholic priest. He was paid by Catholicism and everything. And he went to Rome. He took a trip to Rome. And he said the closer he got to Rome, the closer to hell he got. He said Rome is horrible. He said it's so terrible. The wickedness of the priests and the cardinals and the bishops was so horrible he could not believe it. These people were living horrible lives. If you they did a study on the Vatican here a while back. The Vatican, the major part of Catholicism in the Vatican is homosexual. Period. In 1123 A.D., the Catholic Church come up with a tremendous curse upon mankind. And that curse was celibacy. If you're a good Catholic and you're even married, you cannot cohabit with your wife for pleasure or communion. That's wrong. Did you know that? It's wrong. The Bible says, do not forbid the wife, not to forbid the husband not to forbid the wife, because this is a natural affection that God has made down. But Catholicism says it's all evil other than procreation. That's why you see these Catholic girls when they get up 11, 12, 13 years old to get pregnant. If they're going to have sex, they can't have any sex that prohibits getting pregnant. Because that's what sex is for. It's getting pregnant. Nothing else. Now, the idea of celibacy began from the first place, it went from paganism. Okay? From paganism. When Luther came out of the Catholic Church, one of the first things he did is got married. And he liked beer a lot. He drank a lot, drank. But he came out of Catholicism, and he didn't know anything but what? Church, state. He knew the control of the masses, which the church and the state controls the masses. Okay? So that's what he did. In Germany, what is the state church? The Lutheran Church, from Martin Luther. Martin Luther also called for the annihilation of the Jewish people, because he believed what Augustine said, which was one of the Catholic fathers. You go back and you study the Catholic fathers and all of that, and you know what you're going to end up with? Corruption. Nothing good is out of that. Nothing good. When Muhammad came on the scene in 570 A.D., when he was born, the Catholic Church was already in existence. And the Catholic Church was already persecuting and killing people. And by the time of 632 A.D., when Muhammad died of old age at 62, 63 years old, basically he didn't live very long. Besides that, he had diseases. He had frontal lobe epilepsy and other diseases of the time. By that time, he came along Catholicism, and he began the war on Catholicism. He was a copycat. There's nothing new from Muhammad or the Quran, is there? It's all copycat. It's a poor corruption of the Bible itself. Noah. When Noah had the flood, Noah built an ark. And then it starts raining and water pouring out of the sky and everything else. And he jumps in the ark and, I got to get the animals. So he takes the animals in. Now, this is a very poor corruption of what really happened. And then his son was out there, and the son was going, and Noah was saying, come into the ark, son, come into the ark. And the son's name was Cain. Talk about the corruption and mixed up. And Cain said he's swimming out there, just swimming and swimming and swimming. He's a good swimmer. I don't know where he learned how to swim, but he was swimming. And he says, Noah says, come into the ark, son, come in, son. He said, it's all right, I'm doing fine, I'm swimming fine. I'll go to the mountaintops. I'll be all right out here. Well, everybody got killed. And the Bible says, who got on the ark? Ham, Shem, and Japheth. I don't know if Muhammad didn't read that or what he did, but he got it all mixed up. Because he has Ham, Shem, and Japheth born after the flood. The Bible has it before the flood. Now, the oldest historic document is usually the most sound in it. Since the Quran didn't even come into existence even until after Muhammad had died, they had to remember the hadiths. That's the memories of it. The hadith, the ahadith, that's the memories of what Muhammad said that weren't quite found. They couldn't all agree on it, so that's called ahadith. And what is the practices? The sunnah. All right. That's the practices. That's what he practiced. You go through all of this, you see false religion just growing. You can't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. And the next guy, almost contemporary with Luther was, and partially contemporary, was John Calvin. John Calvin was never an ordained Catholic priest, but he did the job of priest. He was a lawyer. So was Luther. He was a lawyer also. Calvin wanted to be a priest, and he did the job of a priest because he was a great speaker and everything, but he was absolutely controlling, so to speak, terribly controlling. He didn't believe in any leniency at all. Where he had control. If you believed contrary to him, you died. Just like Catholicism. Not one bit. Catholicism's babies didn't understand anything different. We were talking this morning about how the church, the early church, gave everything away. Many of the members of the church gave everything. They weren't told to do that at all. And they practiced pure socialism. That's what they practiced. The early churches did. Now, if you go down through history and you find out why did they practice socialism, why? Why did they do that? They were forced to. They had to take care of each other. A church was a family. A church would go hide out because it was illegal to be a Baptist. So you had to go hide out. And what are the modern people that practice this socialist structure today? Who are these, what we call descendants of these Anabaptists? The Mennonites and the Amish. Mennonites and the Amish. Now, I'm going to tell you something, you work in that society. The churches and the history of these churches, you'll never see real communism in there. Communism is a religion. Where communism is controlled, they usually have a ruler, a leader, and it's anti-belief. You can't believe anything but that. Remember I told you this morning also that Israel was founded on a socialistic structure. When they went back into the land about 1850, they had the what we call the Islam that was there, the Ottoman Empire, had run many Jews out of the land with high taxes. You have to pay 25% of what you make from whatever business you're in, or you're going to die. That's protection money. You pay us 25% and you get to stay alive. That's all. They had driven many of them out. But when they started coming back into the land, they came back in, and those people give their lives, their whole lives. People would come in and volunteer, and they would start these kibbutz. And they would live in this kibbutz. They would have no private property at all except for maybe a musical instrument or a plate or something. And they all take care of each other. And when they got too old, they would still do whatever job they could do, but then they would take care of them. This is a socialistic structure. That's the way they did it. You look at Israel, that's the way Israel lived. That's why the early churches lived. The early churches did that because they had to do this. They had to. The Amish and the Mennonites still carried that structure here. And they live in a separate society, don't they? And they take care of themselves. They believe that. They take care of themselves. There is no Social Security. There's nothing there. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. They take care of themselves. Here we have another society here. This society is a very evil society. This is the bouquet of evil. Here we have this man here has invented music. Why Baptists didn't believe in instrumental music in the churches, because all of these that came out of the Catholic churches, guess what they did? They built big cathedrals and they had great orchestras with big organs. Beethoven, Bach, all of this came from that society. It wasn't good then. We look at that, the Messiah, was it what?
Handel's Messiah?
Yeah, Handel's Messiah, all of this. Baptists said, that's evil. Why was it evil? Because they controlled the masses, and they spent all this money on buildings and churches and opulence. And they would meet in shacks, in people's homes, and they wouldn't have any instrumental music at all because they got these big orchestras over here supplied by the state church. They're standing against the state church. I'm not saying instrumental music is bad, but they said that back then because they were making a statement. Okay? Here is where instrumental music began. So you learn a little bit as you go here, okay? They were making a statement. In those early churches, they were very acoustic, weren't they? You could get up in those pulpits and you could speak in a voice like I'm, and 1,000 people could hear you without any magnification. There was no electronic magnification. The Baptists, since they were putting up in a high place to speak down to the congregation, the Baptists, where they would go, they'd always put the pastor below the congregation. They said the pastor is the servant of the congregation. The pastor isn't the overlord. He's not the master, as they were practicing. He is a servant. Pastors are servants. Do you see the difference? They made a statement. They put him in a hole and made him preach up to the congregation to show that he was a servant, not looking down upon the congregation, because they did practice as lords, didn't they? In Germany, in the early churches after 1123 A.D., the Germans over there demanded that the Catholic priests, this is before Luther now, this is several hundred years before Luther, they demanded that the priest would have what? Concubines. They made them have concubines. They said, Our wives are getting pregnant by these priests when they go to confessional because they had started this auricular confession. So they go there and the priest would seduce the wives. These celibate priests would even seduce their male children and their daughters. The Catholic problem with child molesting and raping of people did not begin in the 20th century or the 19th century. It began in 1123 A.D. because they had gone away from God. They had gone away from God. Control of the masses. You baptize babies. You make them have a godmother and a godfather to make sure that they are raised in the faith. And then when they get to 12 years old, then you have confirmation, and they have to learn and go to catechism to learn. Baptists had catechisms too. You know what? There's a difference between Baptist catechisms and Catholic catechisms and Presbyterian or Calvinist or Luther. Basically, the Baptist catechism was to found you in the faith. They made adult converts. They didn't convert babies. How are you going to convert a baby? They baptize babies. That's why you have godmother and godfather, to believe for them. Make sure that that's what all this godmother and godfather is about. And everybody look at that as, oh, it's something really good. But it's not. It's a perversion. Baptists always practice believer's baptism. And how old do you have to be a believer? It's different stages in life, but most people say from 5 to 5 years old. My daughter was saved, I think, when she was 5, 4, 5, up to 75. Whatever. But when they get saved, they ought to be founded in the truth. There's where you start teaching them the doctrines of God from His Bible, the teachings of the Bible. Now you know why Baptists rejected instrumental music. When they came to America, Baptists rejected instrumental music still in America. Did you know that? Didn't allow that. Didn't allow this instrumental music because they didn't want it to be like Calvin's bunch or Luther's bunch or the Catholic group where all of these big orchestras were. They didn't want to be like that. They didn't want to be called. They didn't want to be mistaken for them at all. And now we have the Church of Christ and the Primitive Baptists. Primitive Baptists, what we call the old Orthodox Primitive Baptists. They do not have instrumental music in their churches. They still don't. And the Church of Christ does not have instrumental music in their churches because Alexander Campbell was actually a Baptist at one time. And he left the Baptist church. And he began his own group, which they call the Church of Christ. He was a great educated man from Europe. And when he came here, and he debated with many pedo-Baptists. And one of the debates was music. That they talked about an infant baptism. He was good on it because he knew Greek and Hebrew. So here we have instrumental music. And name of his brother was Jubal, and he became father of all playing, grasping, masculine and singular cal participle, the lyre, or the harp. This is like a guitar before they had guitars. It's like a harp. By the way, early prostitution, all the prostitutes were very talented musicians, and many of them played harps. Now, this is before this period of time, but it was carried down later on. It was carried down through history. What was the most famous American theater actress that was a Jewish prostitute? Sarah Bernhardt. The Jews, many times in Europe and everything, trained some of their daughters to become prostitutes, courtesans. She was a famous courtesan. And the courtesans in the Japanese, they call them geisha girls. They're very talented. They're educated to mix and mingle with these men. These are courtesans. And at this time, history tells us that these women played these harps. Okay? And they played these harps, and this musical, instrumental music began with a worship of Satan. here. This is the man that invented instrumental music, and it began with the worship of Satan. This is where it all began. And the pipes, the flutes, all types of horns, wind instruments, reed, pipe, flute, bagpipe, wind instrument, all of these. Cain's descendants were extremely innovative. Extremely innovative. We're going to see that. They became blacksmiths. The first blacksmiths were Cain's descendants. The musical instruments were Cain's descendants. We find out later on that Cain's descendants, or not Ham's descendants, not Cain's, but Ham's descendants were also great inventors, the greatest inventors in the human race, basically. All right, Witzilah, 422. Witzilah, Gam, Hu, Yalidah, Tuvet, Tuval, Cain, Lotesh, Kal, Koresh, Nachasheth, Uvarzel, Wa-a-chot. Tuval, Cain, Naamah. And Zillah, this means partition or screen, Zillah. Partition or screen. And Zillah also, that's Gam, she brought forth Tubal Cain. Tubal Cain means flowing from Cain. Flowing from Cain. Flowing from Cain, or water from Cain. Okay? The seed, the water, flowing from Cain. A blacksmith. A blacksmith. A sharpener. A sharpener. Of all sharp tools, of all things being sharp, masculine, singular, cal participle, all things being sharp, copper, no chesheth, and uvarzel, that is iron. We achot, and sister of Tubal Cain. Now here's one of the first women named in the Bible. See that, Sharon? It's a woman. She gets named here. And her name is Naamah. Naamah means pleasant to look upon. It means beautiful. It means beautiful and thick. Beautiful and heavy. Pretty women at this time were heavy. They were thick. They were not skinny. They considered a skinny woman a sickly woman. Okay? A skinny woman was a sickly woman. A woman that had substance to her was thick and beautiful. Not skinny and sickly looking. Now let's go to 23. Verse number 23. Verse 23. Wyomer. Lamech. Lina Sho. Adah. Wetzilah. Shima'on. Koli. Nishe. Lamech. Zazina. Imrati. Ki. Ish. Haragti. Litfitz. Wielad. Li. Chabarati. Here we have a bold bad man. As I wrote in history a long time ago, the bold bad man. The brave bad man. I want to ask you some questions. Now this is a test. This is before the flood. This is before man was given animals to eat. This is before animals were vicious, weren't they? Animals were not vicious at this time. Animals were what? Companions. Animals were livestock companions. And this is before the animals feared men, and the animals didn't have to fear, or before the animals feared men, and before men feared animals. Animals were cooperative. They were companions. They were all pets, in other words. They used them to plow with and things like that, but they were not edible. There were no wild lions. There were no wild bears. There were no wild hogs. There were no wild rhinoceroses. There were no wild elephants. That any man could fear any of these things. Okay? There was no reason to fear, was there? There was no reason to have to protect yourself, was there? But now we have a man inventing weapons of war. Weapons of war. Wyomer, and he said and kept on saying, Lamech, which means overthrower, wild man, king, to his wives. His wives. Now, he's the polygamist. All right. Ada and Zillah. Ada means pleasure, and Zillah means what? A screen, a partition, a division. Here, Cal, feminine plural, you girls here, my sound, my speech, my song. This is a song. This is the first war song in the Bible. This is a song of war and destruction. The first war song. Wives of Lamech, listen, hearken, ha-zinah. I want you to pay attention. Hifel imperative, feminine plural. My decree, my statement, my law. I'm setting down the law of the land now. I'm setting down a decree, a law, an edict in the land. This is the law of the land, because I am a king. Because men I shall have slain. For my wound. Men I shall have slain. First person construct singular, Cal, perfect. I have slain, literally. I have killed or slain. I have slaughtered these men. For my wound, for my bruise. Somebody bruised him. Somebody bumped into him. Somebody did something to him that caused him a bruise or a wound. And children. All right? My wound and children. Young men, this is young boys. For my scar, for my hurt, for my injury, for my stripe. This is a song. This is a war song. This is the beginning of that war song. Okay? Now, in history, there have been many more songs. We have the Song of Moses. We have Israel singing songs as they went out conquering and going into the promised land. This is the first war song. Okay? Now, why do you have war? What was going on? This defunct, evil bouquet of evil had gone out there and began to persecute each other and take captives and making slaves, hadn't they? Had they not? Historically, this is what happened with these people. They had killed people. They were taking captive. They were plundering. Back when Muhammad came on the scene, Muhammad lived the first part of his life in Mecca. That's where he was born. He became a trader. He went to work for Ahijah, his wife, and did a pretty good trading. He went down into Syria and different things, Damascus, and he was influenced by Christianity and Christendom. He heard some Baptists over there. He rejected that, evidently. And he heard some Gnostics at that time, which were heretics. These were Gnostics. They were hiding out in Arabia and all those areas. And we saw that a lot of the New Testament is written against Gnosticism in it. Then when he came back, he finally gave up in Mecca and went to Medina, and he talked those people into letting him go there in peace. Some of them had actually exited and gone down into Arabia, into a Christian nation down there, and the Christian king protected Muhammad's converts, because he lied to them and he told them he believed in, or they said that they believed in the virgin birth of Christ, but they didn't believe who Christ was. That's the problem. He wasn't God the Son. He wasn't the Son of God. He's just another prophet, but he was virgin born. When he moved to Medina, he began to conquer. And the people would fight over booty. And they would go out and conquer. They would drive. He would be killing his own family. He killed a lot of his own people. He called sons to kill fathers, and sons to kill mothers, and brothers to kill brothers, and brothers to kill sisters, and all of this. He demanded this. If you didn't do that, you were a hypocrite. You were not really a true believer. And they conquered. And how did they live? How did Muhammad get so rich? By killing, raping, and plundering. That was their occupation, killing, raping, and plundering. And they were supposed to spend all of their money that they had got by pillage, rape, and plunder on more pillage, rape, and plunder. Here we have the beginning of that right here. This is pillage, rape, and plunder. These are war crimes. Right here. This is war crimes. This is the origin of war crimes. Men, I shall slay. I have slain for my wound. Young men, boys, whatever they were. In America, we have war songs. We have It's a Long Way to Tipperary. You know, this was a European song. And Oh, What a Lonely War. Hanging on the Old Barbed Wire. That was part of a European song. Keep the Home Fires Burning. And Over There. These are war songs. All right. Free America. That was a revolutionary song. Yankee Doodle. This is a war song. And the Battle Hymn of the Republic. And Dixie. When Johnny Comes Marching Home. These are all war songs. But now we had nations at war with each other, and these are all war songs. This is the first war song right here. Now, the greatest warrior that pretty much we ever had in America, and nobody will ever repeat that, I don't think. I don't think there's any way to repeat what Audie Murphy did. Audie Murphy wrote songs, and he wrote some war songs. But it's a different way. He wrote the war songs from looking from the inside out. That's different. I want you to see what he wrote about war songs. Now, he wrote quite a few different songs. I think 17 songs altogether. Now, Roy Clark, Dean Martin, Jerry Wallace, Eddie Arnold, Porter Wagner, Teresa Brewer, Charlie Bride, Jimmy Dean, and many others have recorded his songs. Shutters and Boards, one of them. That's one of his songs. There were 10 songs on an album at one time recorded with Audie Murphy and Scott Turner. Audie began to write poetry and songs when he was in the war, in the battle, in the trenches. This is one of them. Dusty old helmet, rusty old gun. They sit in a corner and wait. 2 souvenirs from the Second World War that have withstood time and hate. Many times I've wanted to ask them, and now that we're here all alone, relics all 3 of a long ago war, where has freedom gone? Mute witness to a time of much trouble, where kill or be killed was the law, Were these implements used with high honor? What was the glory they saw? Freedom flies in your heart like an eagle. Let it soar with the winds high above. Among the spirits of soldiers now sleeping, guard it with care, with love. I salute my old friends in the corner. I agree with all they have said. And if the moment of truth comes tomorrow, I'll be free, or by God, I'll be dead. That was one. Here's another one that he sang over and over again. This one just broke his heart. The other one, as he looked back in time, he knew he would be looking back upon this if he lived through it. Oh, gather round me, comrades, and listen while I speak of a war where hell is 6 feet deep. Along the shore the cannons roar. Oh, how can a soldier sleep? That going slow on Anzio, and hell is 6 feet deep. My pastor and friend, Darius Sherwood Madden, was there. He went in there, a 300-pound powerful man, came out 140 pounds. After Anzio, they sent him home. He had gone in a lot of these campaigns with Audie Murphy. All these ones that Anzio killed a lot of men. Praise be to God for his for this captured soul that rich with blood does seep, with yours and mine like butchered swine, and hell is 6 feet deep. That death awaits, there's no debate, no triumph will we reap. The crosses grow in Anzio, and hell is 6 feet deep. Here's another one. This is war, isn't it? This is telling about real war. Alone and far removed from their earthly care, the noble ruins of men lie buried here. You were strong men and good men, endowed with youth and much the will to live. I hear no protest from the mute lips of the dead. They rest, there is no more to give. So long, my comrades, sleep ye where ye fall upon the field. But tread softly, please. March over my heart with ease. March on and on, but to God alone we kneel. That is a song of a warrior. That's what it is. This man here reveled in war, in killing, and murder. Remember, when we're not allowed to kill, what did they need a weapon for? What did they need a weapon at this time? Only to conquer and pillage and rape and to take. Let's go on a little bit further now. 424. Ki Shiva Tayim Yukam Kayin We Lamek Shivaim We Shiriyah Wayada Adam Od Eth Ishto Wa Taled Bin Wa Tikra Et Shemo Sheth Ki Sheth Li Elohim Zerah Achir Tachat Hevel Ki Haragal Cain. Now we have another line. We have another line of the faithful. Different. Different attitude, a different people. But who had caused all this evil of bouquet? The bouquet of evil. Who had caused it? Adam and Eve. But guess what they get to see? They get to see the fulfillment of their sin, of their rebellion against God in these killers that are their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And remember, they're alive to see all of this. They're seeing these people out there. They're hearing the stories. The newspapers back then were not printed. The newspapers were carried by people visiting one area to another. And they always wonder, what's going on over there in the land of Nod? Dad, There's a lot of killing going on there. Not only is there a lot of killing going on over there, they've invented instrumental music to worship Satan and to worship these terrible people. And they're demanding them to worship them because they are now kings over there. I can imagine what Adam and Eve were doing as they saw this from their children. These are their blood over there. Not only that, Dad, but Tubal-Cain, he invented sharp tools to kill men with. They're killing men. They're chopping men up like Cain did our brother Abel, the first bad man. And then we have a bold bad man, an outlaw, that invents how to blacksmith and make weapons of war. And now we have war. And we have the first war song, don't we? We have the first war song. War is hell. That's what Sherman said. Sherman was a bad man too, wasn't he? He could never have won against the South had he not broke all the rules of war. They would all be war criminals. They would be war criminals today, what he did. That's not the way you treat your enemy. There are rules of war, supposedly. 424. Because 70 times is avenged Cain. And Lamech, 70 and 7. Bragging about killing men, didn't they? How many men did they kill? How many men did they kill here? They were starting to depopulate their area with these sharp swords. Beheadings and choppings. It says when Cain slew Abel, what did he do? He slashed and he slashed and he slashed and he slashed, and he overkilled him. He watched the blood run into the ground. And then Jehovah confronted Cain, didn't he? And the mark, the oath that was placed upon Cain, he cursed the ground, his false religion that he was serving, the ground. Look how much, if the ground's cursed, all right, God, but look what I did. Look what all I brought to you. And of course it wasn't enough. It wasn't a tithe. It wasn't the right division, is what he said. You didn't divide correctly, Cain. Why don't you trade that food over there? Why don't you trade that food for an animal and bring the animal? Because see, something innocent has to die for that is guilty. Cain's false religion wouldn't allow that. And when false religion always comes up, what does it do to the truth? Tries to extinguish it. Because false religion doesn't want to hear the truth. They don't want to hear it. Because 70 times is Cain avenged, and Lamech 70 and 7. 70 times they killed 70 men, and now they kill 77 more. 70 men and 77 more, how much is that? 147 people have died. That we have record of 147 people dying with war. 147 people now are dead on the battleground. American Indians, when they want to war against each other, it was like play war. The worst thing you could do to somebody is slap them or steal their moccasins out of their tent while they're there, out of their teepee, and take them. You didn't want to kill somebody, because when you killed somebody, that would cause a real problem. You insulted somebody, but you didn't kill them. They didn't want to shed blood. Bloodshed would cause many years of war. So they didn't want to do that. But here we have 147 people at least killed. 147 in this war. Now, one chronologist said Lamech was about 3130 BC, if that chronology is correct. Okay? And Noah knew Adam, 425, and knew Adam again, Od et Ishto, his wife, and she brought forth a son. This is the faith line. And she called him, and kept on calling third person feminine, singular, cal, consecutive, perfect, called his name Zeth, substitute. What else? Zeth, substitute. What was he a substitute of?
Brother that was killed.
More than that.
Oh, she thought she got.
The Cain was the line of faith at one time. He was going to be the patriarch. But now, Cain has substituted, and Cain has thrown away all of his chances of being a spiritual leader. Okay? All of his chances of being a spiritual leader are gone now. And not only that, but Zeth is also a substitute for Abel, which he killed. Cain was going to be the spiritual leader. Cain was going to be the patriarch of his family because he was the firstborn. But now he has substituted, he has forfeited all of his preeminence. He is replaced as spiritual leader, and now this man replaces Abel, who he killed, and Cain, who is still alive but is over there bringing up killers. A bouquet of evil. She called his name Zeth. For because he has appointed for me, God, seed, Zerah, another instead of Abel. Because, or for, he has slaughtered him. He has slaughtered him. Third person masculine singular, Cal perfect. Cain, my begotten one, the one I thought was the Messiah, has murdered his brother. Has murdered his brother. Do you have any questions? We went from 4:18 to 26. No, let's see, 4:18 to 25. Do you have any questions on this? Sharon, do you have any questions?
Well, I was thinking that with 147, I mean, the population wasn't all that large, and with 147 of the men slaughtered.
These are killing brothers and sisters.
Right, I mean, but that might explain for more the growth of polygamy, because then there wouldn't be husbands for a lot of these women. So
We don't know where he got them. Maybe he got them by conquest. We don't know all the story. Now, I should have brought the book. Well, I do have the book of Jasher to read along with this. The woman named Beautiful, that was also later on. Naaman was also Noah's wife, and it tells you in the book of Jasher what lineage she came from and everything else. We'll look at that a little bit next time. We'll do that. Brother Mike, you got any questions? Brother Abe. Questions? How about it there, Pamela? No? Brother Roger, you asked me a question I can't answer it, I know. Well, we'll start in the 5th chapter, in the 26th verse next week, and then we'll go into the 5th chapter. There's some really neat things in these. I hope you enjoyed the class tonight. Thank you for your endurance of those hard seats.